Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today's will be a good one because we're down here in the basement bait shop. It's a rainy, cold September day here in Wisconsin. It's only 58 degrees and it's been raining all day. And when it's a bad day outside, I like to build rods inside. So we're going to do a build to catch here. But this video is going to be much more geared towards the building of the rods. Every time I do a build to catch video, I get a lot of comments where people want me to concentrate more on building the rod than the fishing because they want to see what it takes to build the rods. You know, building rods I think sounds very intimidating, but when you see it done, it's so not that tough. There are a handful of components that you have to glue on, and that's really what it comes down to, but you need to know how to do it. So today's video is going to be geared towards the components that we use and putting the rod together. I will put some fish catches in the video so that you can see how this rod performs in action. And the rod today that I want to talk about is this one right here. This is an MHX CB906. It's a blended rod, 7.5 foot. This is a 6 power, so it's a very soft tip, strong backbone, but it's made for your crankbaits, it's made for chatterbaits, it's made for swim baits. It's made to give you some bend in your rod so that the fish can fully engulf your bait. This rod is a very, very good multi-purpose rod for me for those three techniques. I use it. MHX has different models of this blank, different powers. You can get a CB905, which is 1 power lighter, a CB907. I use them all. But the 906 is a very versatile one. This is rated for 3/8 ounce up to 1.25 ounces. So it's definitely capable of handling a lot of different baits with respect to that. So I broke one the other day. I've got a broken one. I don't know if you guys can see it in the corner over there that I'm going to strip off all the components from, and I can reuse some of that stuff before I throw it out. So I want to walk you through what we're going to need for this. In this case, we get a bare blank. This is, as you can see, the CB906 blended blank. Nothing on it except for the little plastic rubber keeper that goes on the tip. I leave that on until I need to completely take it off to put the tip on, just from a protection standpoint. For one reason, when you're dealing with rods that are 7.5 foot and you're in a small room or a lower ceiling like I have here, which is right at about 7.5 feet, if the blank hits the ceiling without that little rubber stopper, I may leave marks, so I just leave it on there. You can take it off if you want. The other components that you're going to need, this is really straightforward, and I will flash the model numbers at Mudhole, which is where I get all of my parts. I'll flash those on the screen, but just for all of you to be aware, in the description of the video, I also leave all of the model numbers, so you can go right to mudhole.com and purchase all of the parts that I use to make the exact same rod. And I give you the exact dimensions, the measurement dimensions, as well in the video description, so you can lay out your guide train and the reel seat and put everything in the exact position of the rods that I use. It's a really good way to help those that are beginners to rod building know that what they're doing is going to result in something that works great. And I'll tell you guys, I can't stress enough that since I started building my own rods, which now has been, I think, since 2015, so we're talking about like 7 years, I truly believe my fishing performance increases because of how much more in tune I am with my rod, with my reel, with my baits, because you understand how it all works together so much better. Okay, so from a component standpoint, like if you went to mudhole.com and looked at reel seats, you would find that there are tons and tons of different reel seats to choose from. So finding one that fits your grip is important. This is the ECSM. This is a size 13. So one thing to keep in mind when you're talking about bait casting, so casting rods, is generally speaking, the reel seats are made to fit tight onto the blank. Spinning rods, you need to arbor up the blank a little bit to get the spinning rod to fit, or the spinning reel seat to fit tight. But with casting, you need to get a snug fit onto the blank. In this case, with this blank, I know that I like to put my handles at about 10.25 inches up from the bottom of the blank. The size 13 fits. So keep in mind, guys, that if you use a size 12.5, You won't be able to slide it down as far as where I like to put it, but maybe you like a 14-inch length on your reel seat, and then maybe you need a 12.5. So if you buy it, to counter that, if you buy a size 13.5, it may slide way down or even off the blank, so it won't snug tight. So when you're dealing with casting rods, you do want to make sure that you have the right reel seat. The other two components that go below the reel seat are your grips. I use a split grip system, and I really like the Winn grips. In this case, this is the handle grip, this is the butt grip. Both of these we will ream out to fit onto the blank, and then we'll glue them in place, and they will be snug. The other part of the whole handle system component is your winding check. I just popped that off. I've already pulled this out. This is a size 13 as well that fits the reel seat. In this case, this one pops into the reel seat, as you can see, hopefully. I'll pop it out. And all this is going to do is give a good, nice, snug finish onto the blank with the reel seat. I generally end up putting epoxy, some thread work that goes right here, and then I epoxy over it just to kind of complete that, to prevent water from getting in. You can see I kind of just epoxy that up to make a nice finished look, and it really brings the rod together. So that's the whole handle system. We're talking about 4 parts, not much at all. We'll walk you through how to put that on. The next are kind of your smaller components. In this case, this is my hook keeper. I go with a Dropshot style hook keeper, so it's not going to be closed off. As you can see again on this one, there's my hook keeper. And the reason I do that is because when I'm practicing for tournaments, oftentimes I don't have hooks on, so I don't have a hook to go through an enclosed hook keeper. I'll just take it and use it like a drop shot weight, where I just pop the weight or pop the Texas rig, whatever it is, right under that hook keeper, and it stays in place just fine. So after that, you're talking about your guide train. So for me, what I use are the CRB laser guides. You have one, I use 2 double-footed guides. I have a size 8 and a size 6, just so you can see for comparison. So a size 8, a size 6, and then I go with 10 single-footed size 5s. So we'll put all of those on, and then the last one you just slide on to the end is your tip top. And in this case, this is a size 5, 5-5.5. And then I'll glue that on, and we'll just epoxy it all. So those are the steps, guys. It's really not difficult. You can do all of this with just a single rod wrapper, a hand manual rod wrapper, and you need 1 turner to allow the rods to dry and to allow you to, basically you just need it to dry and allow you to put the epoxy on. But it's pretty straightforward. So I'll get all this ready and I'll walk you through each of the steps. The first thing that I like to do is identify the spine of the rod. This is somewhat debated within the rod building industry that you don't need to do it, and you definitely can build a rod without identifying the spine. I've got a spine finder, so I like to use it to identify where the spine is so that I can put the guides in line with that spine, just to prevent a little bit of twisting of the rod blank, which to me helps the performance of the rod, but it's not 100% necessary. All I'm going to do is put it in my spine finder and apply some pressure to it. And then once I roll it in the spine finder, I will feel it kind of snap into place, and then I know where the spine is based off of that. It's a simple process that takes only a few seconds, and I think does make a little bit of a difference in rod performance. Now that I've identified the spine, I can go ahead and put my measurements on my rod blank to determine where the other components are going to go. The handle, the reel seat, all of my guides. And in this case, I've already got another CB-906 that I've built, so I'm just going to lay these side by side and make my markings based off of the other rod that I've built, because this is the exact rod that I want to build. I do have the dimensions and a tape laid out on my desk, so if I was building a blank from scratch without having another rod to use as kind of a template, at that point then I could just lay it out and use the dimensions that I'll provide for you guys as well. But it's just a lot faster if I can lay the 2 rods out side by side and just make my markings based off that. So next up, we're going to start working on the handle. This is the messy part of the rod build. In this case, with the Winn grips, you get a one size hole that comes inside of the Winn grips. Both of them are too small to fit on the blank, and this is because they're made to come so that you can ream them out and fit them on a variety of blank sizes. In this case, we need to ream it down to fit the CB-906 blank, and that's where the CRB reamer set comes in. This is a whole bunch of different reamers in various sizes that fit onto a handheld drill. I will take this and just ream out the inside all the way down so that it fits nice and snug onto the rod blank. I do want to point out that, remember, your rod blank is tapered, so you want to start with your handle. You want to start with the bottom side first because the reamer is tapered as about the same degree as the rod. If I were to go the other way, I'd be putting the wrong taper into the handle, so that's something worth noting. So I will go ahead and do that to make both of these nice and snug, and then we'll put them on. But this is the start of the handle. This is the messy part. All right, so we've got all of our pieces into place here. You can see we've reamed the handle down, we've reamed the butt grip down to fit, and then I slid the reel seat and winding check onto the rod blank just to make sure that everything fit. Nothing is glued down, as you can see, but I just like to make sure that everything fits snug just before you go ahead and start the gluing process, because you do start getting the glue drying up at a relatively quick rate. And you want to make sure that, like, your reel seat fits, and in this case, like I said before, it starts to fit snug about an inch from the handle, but I can slide it down from there, so I know that that's going to create a good snug fit. That's what the finished rod handle is going to look like. From a glue perspective, I just use a 2-part Pro Paste glue. All of this, like I said, I get from Mud Hole. You've got one that is the adhesive, one that's the resin, one that's the hardener. You're going to mix it at an even 1-to-1 ratio. And then I always like to have a bunch of these are just paper towels that I moisten ahead of time with some isopropyl alcohol, and I just make sure that I've got these ready, because you do get a lot of excess glue that comes out of the parts, and you want to make sure you clean that up very carefully, because if you don't, you're going to have little glue balls that can harden, and it just makes, you know, your life either a pain trying to clean it up, or if you don't clean it up, it makes the rod look a little sloppy. So you just want to make sure you get all of that excess glue off when you put all the parts into place. So I'll get that all prepped here. There we got it. We just glued the handle into place. I'm going to give that some time now, a couple hours at least, before I start messing with the guides. A lot of times I'll do this in one day, let it sit overnight, and then do the guides the next day. You don't really need to do that. You give it a little bit of time and it'll harden up enough where you for sure can start putting the guides on. But that's how you put the handle on. See you in a little bit. Just ate some lunch, came down, I started doing a little threading. As you can see, I put some orange wrap on the base. I still have not put any of the guides on the rod, which is what I'm going to start to do now. The thread work at the bottom is more decorative. You don't have to do it. I still like to do it. Mainly what I do is I use colors of thread that tell me exactly what the rod is. So I know when I make a CB-906, 907, or 905, they're going to be the orange thread rods. They're the only rods that I use orange thread for. The remainder of the rod, I'm going to go with black thread just because I think that looks better than if I had orange rods going all the way up the guide. I'm not a real flashy guy, so I don't necessarily want a real bright rod, but I do like having the colored thread. As you can see, I put the labels on as well as the hook keeper. Other than that, we'll get down to putting the guides on, and I'll show you how to put one on and then finish the rod up. It's a very simple process, so let's get to that. So here's my process. I take a guide, hold it with tweezers, warm up the foot, dab it in a little tip-top glue, line it up right where I think it should be according to my marking that I made earlier. And then I look down the rod to see if it's right in line with where it is, where I want it, and it is. At that point, I'll take my thread. Now I'm going to make 3 wraps, or 1 wrap away, so left of my thread coming up from the spools, and then I'm going to make 3 wraps towards the guide, so on the right side of the thread coming up. At this point, then I'm going to just go ahead and start rotating it, making sure that my thread continues to move onto the right side of the thread so it's stacking nicely until I get to my tag end. In this case, my tag end is here. I will cut my tag off so it does not get in the way. And at this point, I'm just going to make sure that my line or my thread continues to stack up fine. Those first few wraps you can see are not tight. So as I'm wrapping, I'm just going to bump them over to start making sure that that's tighter. Get those stacked exactly how I want. And we can clean it up anytime you want afterwards. Then you just start wrapping towards the guide until I get about 2/3 of the way. And then at that point, I'll put my pull through on the bottom side of the rod, like you can see here. You can buy pull-throughs, you can make pull-throughs, but you're going to want to put your loop of the pull-through under your thread and pull it up just so it's snug right under the wrapping that you're doing. Continue to go all the way to the guide or to where you want to go, which is about where the guide starts pulling away. One more wrap. Okay, at that point now your wrap is on. I've got a loop in my pull-through. I'm going to release the tension on the thread, but I've got a finger on my threading on the rod. So I'm going to cut it free, so now it's free from the spool. I grab my tweezers, grab the tag end that I just cut off, pull it through the pull-through loop, pull that tight, and pull my pull-through so that the loop pulls apart and is tight right on the thread, at which point then I'm going to cut the tag end off. So now all I got to do is pull that through, but when you pull it through, you want to apply some pressure on it. So I pulled it through, and you can see I have a little bit of a tag, at which point I take a little bit of heat, which melts almost all of that thread, and you can take the burnishing tool to clean that off. And there you go. Clean the thread work up a little bit. Everything looks beautiful. And there's your guide. Now I got 9 more to do, and then we'll show you how to put the epoxy on. All right, we got the rod all threaded up. I've got it here in the drying rack, ready to get 2-part epoxy for the rod guides. I put the tip top on as well. That's nothing more than a little dab of glue. Slide it right over the tip of the rod, and then you can seal it in with your epoxy. This is the Flex Coat High Build formula. This is what I've used for a while. You can get it off Mudhole's website. There's a whole bunch of different epoxies that you can use. This is kind of the one I started with, and I've kind of stuck with it. I've heard there's some other brands out there that guys are really liking too. But for now, I'm just using up these bottles before I order some more. So I'm going to mix this up, and I'm going to show you how to put it on the guides. All right, I've got my 2-part epoxy mixed up. I've got a cheap paintbrush that I can throw away when I'm done. And this is just simply a matter of throwing it on and layering it. I like to start right in the middle, kind of get a nice chunk going, kind of cover the center portion, load the brush up a little bit again. And then at this point, I'm going to start pushing it over to one side. So I'll go to the left, and I like to get it about a 1/16 of an inch off the threads so that it can stick to the blank. Then I come back and I push it the other way. So that's about a thick 1/16 of an inch on the other side. Just like that. I'll move some over here for the next guide. And at that point, that looks pretty good. Sometimes I'll just give it some dabs just to kind of spread it evenly. And then I'll take a little bit of heat and hold it off to the side of the rod, which will pop any air bubbles and really allow that epoxy to flatten out and spread out perfectly, just like that. Well, there's a full rod build of the MHX CB906 finished product. I can't wait to get this rod out on the water and use it for everything from your crankbaits, whether it's square bills, shallow cranks, or deep cranks. It is my go-to crankbait rod. It's also one of my favorites for throwing an exposed hook on, say, a 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce swim bait. If you're slow rolling deep or fishing suspended fish, it's a great rod. And then the last technique that I really enjoy throwing it for is your vibrating jigs. With a vibrating jig, that's another one where you need the backbone, which this rod has, and you need to be able to rip it out of the grass, but at the same time, you want that really soft parabolic tip that allows that fish to suck that bait in when they're on that reaction strike. So many times when you rip the bait out of the grass, those fish react on it. They're not truly trying to eat it, and that's when you get a lot of those fish that get side hooked or barely skin hooked, and that's because the rod that you're using is not allowing that bait to be fully sucked into the fish's mouth when they do react like that. And that's why these soft tip rods, these blended type rods like these CB906, the 905, the 907 are such good rods for these techniques. I've been throwing it for years now, and honestly, I kind of start going towards a lot of other new techniques too. You can do a lot of things with it, like your topwater baits. Anything where you want the fish to be able to get your bait, but you don't want to pull the hooks out of the fish's mouth, you might want to check out one of these CB906s. Just a really good rod. It's a fun build on a day like today where it's raining out and it's just the day you don't want to be outside. You can be building rods so that when you do get a really nice day, you can get out on the water and catch a few extra fish with a rod that you built. So check it out. All the dimensions and the product parts for mudhole.com are located in the video description. Make sure you check those out. If you want to build this exact rod down to the dimensions, down to the thread color, you can find it in the video description, guys. So go check it out at mudhole.com. They've always got big sales going on too. So maybe if you happen to be watching it now and you go check out their website, you'll find that they have one of the big sales and you can get this rod and all the components for a little bit cheaper. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like these rod build videos, let me know in the comment section. If there's rod builds that you want me to do for your favorite technique, let me know and I can add that onto my list as well. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll have another video coming out tomorrow.